Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at Pluto's entrance into the sign of Aquarius, which is coming up here this weekend. We're going to take a look at it from the standpoint of all of the whole sign horoscopes. So you could listen to the horoscopes today from the standpoint of your rising sign or your sun sign. I recommend your rising sign because that's going to correspond with the whole sign house version of your birth chart, which means you'll get the actual house that Pluto is entering from the ancient or traditional perspective, as well as the Indian perspective. Both traditions originally used whole sign houses. So you could listen to your sun sign too. It's a divinatory approach that works for some people. So anyway, let's go ahead and oh, by the way, I'm going to pull one tarot card for each. We covered these in depth in a few horoscope editions, by the way, at the beginning of the month. So you might want to go back and listen to the horoscopes for January, as well as some that I did around the Kickstarter at the end of December. These are sort of refreshers because there's probably a lot of people out there who could just use a nice little refresher on what topics are about to be activated through this transit. We've covered the major confluence of transits from a variety of standpoints this week already. So I also recommend going back and listening to what we've already covered, because there's quite a bit that we've already talked about with respect to the astrological energies that are coming through over the weekend. Anyway, before we get into it, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe. Click that thumbs up button. It takes 2 seconds and it really helps the channel to grow. You can find a transcript of any of my daily talks on the website, nightlightastrology.com. Don't forget, this Friday, we are starting our new masterclass series. We're looking at the fixed stars in part 1 of our series, which takes place over 4 weeks, about 10 hours worth of content. Year 3 program just began, and Roots and Spheres just began. So you can check all of those programs out on the website, nightlightastrology.com, under the courses tab. And be sure to check out need-based tuition if you would like to take one of those courses but can't afford it. We'd be happy to work with some of you out there who might need a little help. And any questions about any of the programs that you're looking at, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. Okay, on that note, let's put up the real-time clock and remind ourselves of what the heck is going on. So here we are, Thursday, and we've been talking a lot about what's happening between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday when the 2 planets, the Sun and Pluto, enter Aquarius. So once Pluto enters Aquarius, it's there to stay until September this year, at which point it'll have a brief retrograde back into Capricorn until middle November, and then it leaves Capricorn, goes back into Aquarius. I think it's about November 17th or so. And then it stays in Aquarius for about 2 decades. So this is the year of Pluto's entrance to stay into the sign of Aquarius. This is the first entrance. The second one will be toward the end of the year, but we should be starting to feel and notice the effects of Pluto as it changes signs and houses. So today what we're going to do, because we've talked at length already this week about the Sun and Pluto's conjunction. We've talked about the fact that it's happening as Venus squares Neptune, Mercury trines Jupiter. And so today we're just going to do horoscopes. What I'm going to do is advance the chart, and these will be brief compared to, say, like the beginning of the month, or we did hours worth of treatments on these last month. So you could go back and look at some of those if you wanted to go even further. Today's just sort of like reminder horoscopes, because sometimes, we get lost in the shuffle of a lot of astrological information, and it's easy to just forget the basics. So we're going to look at them, and I'm going to pull a card for each to help unpack the archetypes within the house. That does not mean that the card I pick is, it is of divinatory significance, which means it's aiding me in the way that I interpret the entrance of the planet into the new house. It may or may not resonate for every last person who hears this. Just remember that. Symbols have a funny way of speaking, and sometimes they're more relevant than others. And that's a normal part of the process of divination. So anyway, let's start with Aries, because we're going to move through in order. I'm going to pick a card. Yeah. So sorry, in my head. All right. So for Aries, Pluto enters the 11th whole sign house. That is a house that was traditionally associated with friends and allies, with groups of people and specific benefactors in our life who may be useful when it comes to the pursuit of our wishes, hopes, dreams, and aspirations. It was called the joy of Jupiter, and it is a house that is associated with that which is rising up to the top of the chart but is not yet there. And so anything in this house is thought, you think of it as something that's helping us reach the top of the sky, or developing us toward the top of the sky, which is a place of accomplishment. And so this Pluto's entrance into the 11th house can suggest a shift in your long-term dreams, plans, goals, or visions. It could mean that there is also a transformation around the allies or people that you find most conducive to the realization of your dreams, hopes, and visions. That means changes in friends, groups, social institutions, communities, organizations, anyone or anything that is a part of your aspirations and hopes. Your colleagues, so to speak, and also anyone that's considered like a helpful benefactor. What I pulled one card, and I'm going to show you. The card that I pulled is the Four of Wands, which shows a kind of victory and celebration, and also kind of like an early stage within the development of the suit. The fours are setting the foundation for future success. So this card to me suggests, remember, one of the meanings of the word Pluto, which you've heard me say before, is riches. And so it wouldn't be surprising to me for Aries folk out there to be seeing a kind of death and rebirth, Pluto, right, of your long-term dreams, aspirations, hopes, longings, and the people who are best suited to help you getting there. Or the transformation is within the social dynamics of your life or your professional life. And Pluto, as a planet of riches, may also suggest that you are celebrating some victories within the scope of your long-term dreams, hopes, and wishes, and that you're finding people and allies that can help you establish long-term success, or that you have to look at who does and who does not help you establish long-term success. The Four of Wands kind of has this feeling of like, there's a celebration, almost like a wedding maybe, but there's a celebration of people that are all coming together, and there's a sense of having established some level of victory or accomplishment. So those are archetypes that seem to be speaking through Pluto's entrance into the 11th. So remember all of that. This is not something that will all appear on one day, but rather something that you may start to notice over the course of the next year. And remember, we also had this around for a little bit last year, from March to like June. All right, let's go ahead, and we're going to take a look at the sign of Taurus next. And see what we're going to draw a card for Taurus as well. This places Pluto into the 10th house. And let's do this. Okay, good. So, Pluto entering the 10th house for those of you who are a Taurus rising, or if you're listening for Taurus sun, we see Pluto go into the 10th house, which is the place of action. It was called praxis, which means action, but action as in action in the world, in the larger context of the marketplace, and the social civic arena that you are a part of. Mostly it will be about career, but depending on what stage of life you're in, you may see this speaking to those things that you are identified with socially, or those activities that define your social interaction with the world. Pluto moving into this house could suggest a remaking or reconstitution of your career, of who you work with, of your boss, your title, your professional path, or a transformation within organizations you work for, the company you work for. It could be about more power or responsibility, promotion, wealth, the development of those things in your career, all of which might be really nice. On the other hand, the Plutonian signature of death and rebirth could bring a significant remaking of professional dynamics and workplace dynamics. The card that I drew for you is the Three of Swords, which is interesting because this would point to a certain level of like breakup or heartbreak, or dealing with significant disappointments that maybe, I mean, when I see this in the context of the 10th house, I really think, okay, yeah, there could be people replacing you at work, or power struggles, or breaking up with a workplace, or just the pangs of heartache that lead you to the next card that comes up in the sequence. The Four of Swords shows a kind of memorial space where there's a real reflective and contemplative energy. I can't help but wonder if you're going to need some distance and space in which to consider new ways of being in your career after some disappointments, which would be very Plutonian. On the other hand, I don't think everyone will be experiencing that. That card may be very applicable for some Pluto in the 10th situations, and others may find that the change coming into the career house is really exciting and in many ways very empowering. One of the things Pluto does is it empowers whatever it touches. So either way, you see it very powerfully in the house of career for Tauruses. Now, let's move forward. We're going to go to Geminis, which places Pluto into the 9th house. And here, oh, I like that one. Yeah, okay. So here we have Pluto moving into the house that's really associated with our understanding. That understanding might be your understanding of a particular discipline like medicine or rocket science, or it could be your understanding of the universe as in religion or philosophy. It could be that you're going back to school as Pluto enters that house, or that you're going to be studying something, or that a religious point of view is about to be transformed, that your understanding and your outlook on life, which is a big part of the 9th house, is ready to meet its end and be transformed. This happens when people go through religious or spiritual conversions. It happens when people start studying a new subject like astrology or divination. It happens sometimes when people just expand their minds by learning something new, or one teacher or form of teaching that has been useful is no longer, so there's a death, and then there's a rebirth, a new kind of teaching or wisdom, a new philosophical outlook, a new orientation. So I like this for Geminis as the beginning of a transformative process around your mind, your understanding, your paradigm, your philosophy, your moral, religious, or spiritual compass, and maybe things to do with education and teaching or teachers becoming really important. Now, the card I drew for you Geminis is the 10 of Swords, which is a pretty ominous card. Like when people get this card, they usually get a little bit worried. I just see this as like, it's the end. It's time to be, something is really ready to be done. And when Pluto enters the 9th house and I see this card, I go, yeah, certain points of view, certain philosophical or spiritual perspectives or teachers or teachings have run their course, and it's time to let go and shift to something new. Or even the idea that something that's been a useful paradigm or point of view is just done. I drew a second card to get something maybe a little bit more, a little bit more qualification. The 8 of Cups came up, which means walking away from something, letting go of something. I would see that in the 9th house as the end of and the letting go of a former point of view, and maybe opening your mind to something new. You have to let go in order to get there. All right, so that's what some things to consider for Geminis. Let's take this forward, and we're going to put Cancer on the ascendant, which takes Pluto into the 8th house. I'm going to draw another card. Well, this is an interesting card. So the 8th house, of course, you've heard me talk about this many times before. This is the place of our soul contracts. It was called the esteem of other people, in a place of debts, both karmic and like literal, like the debt you owe on your house or the debt you owe on a credit card, but also the figurative or more, sort of mysterious debts that we owe to other people through soul contracts. When Pluto comes into your 8th house, it starts shaking up the dynamics of your soul contracts with other people. What you owe or what you are owed will change. You could be in receipt of a powerful level of success or opulence or wealth or income, or you could become more popular with Pluto entering the 8th house, because there is one of the things that Pluto brings again is this kind of release of creative energy and empowerment and regenerative force. It does so by transforming things very deeply. And one of the things that can transform in the 8th house is what other people are prepared to give you, or how much they appreciate you, and therefore what they're willing to invest or put into you. I mean, in many horary charts, one of the methods for looking at how successful a business will be to see what the reception between, first, second, seventh, and 8th houses will be like, because it has to do with whether the clients and their money will value your product. So Pluto in the 8th house can really speak to a transformation of soul contracts, that debts will come due. they're in debts. The ultimate debt, of course, that we all owe coming into a temporary body is the temporary body's like a loaner vehicle. It's like one of those you get from the rental car. Well, your car's in the, you get a rental car where your car's in the shop or something. And we're going to have to leave this body eventually. So, death, but also debt. And not all death and debt is a bad, ominous, terrible thing. And it can be very metaphorical, not literal. But then you also think about the wealth and the abundance and the untapped resources that will start to pour in from other people, and the way that they look at you and value you differently compared to maybe how you've ever been valued in the past. So kind of an interesting, bit of a wild card in the 8th house, right? But the card that I drew is the 10 of Cups, which suggests like a very happy kind of final state of abundance and happiness, a little bit of a happily ever after card. This to me, it makes me wonder about being in receipt of something, powerfully life affirming, and kind of, this opens up the idea that the Pluto in the 8th for some people is going to provide tremendously powerful resources, and maybe the joining of assets between people, as in a marriage or relationship, that through its joint capacity creates a larger state of abundance, peace, or happiness. So I think that's a great card for Cancers out there. All right, we're going to move forward again, and now we are going to put Leo on the ascendant. And that puts Pluto into the 7th. Oh, this is interesting. A great card for this one. So Pluto in the 7th is obviously connected to the transformative process, the regenerative force, the release of primordial energy within the sphere of relationships. That could mean meeting someone. It could mean breaking up with someone. It could mean the death of someone that you're close to. It could mean the rebirth of a relationship that needs a healing crisis to propel it to its next level, so to speak. There is probably no placement that, people get more interested in than big planets entering the 7th house. I mean, I see this every day in my client practice, right? Because our relationships are some of the most vulnerable, precious, and important places in our lives. They're also one of the most fertile grounds for self-development and growth, because our relationships are always giving us feedback about who we are and where we are. And so Pluto entering the 7th suggests dramatic, for Leos, suggests dramatic change and evolution and growth and development coming in through the realm of relationships. It's also about the wealth, power, and creative force that can bring regeneration and truly enriching transformation into our lives. And that's going to come through the realm of relationships, through what's working, through what's not working, through the new people you meet, through the people you deepen your bonds with. And the card that I drew is the Wheel of Fortune. And the Wheel of Fortune really suggests that we're also looking at patterns and cycles that have history behind them, and maybe the turning or shifting of patterns and cycles in a reverse direction, or in a new direction, or in the sense of completing a cycle or that has some history behind it. So the Wheel of Fortune, whenever I see it come up in a reading, it generally means that that there's whatever's coming up has history behind it, and that we're looking at the completion of a cycle or the transforming of a cycle that you're familiar with. You know this cycle. I think there's a very positive case to be made that card could suggest starting something new and healthier, because you're transforming the karmic patterns in that area of your life. So, but sometimes it does mean that you're something that has gone one way typically is about to reverse and go a different way, because the Wheel of Fortune suggests a pattern that is ready to shift one way or another. All right, for Virgos, we take Pluto into the 6th house. Let me pull a card here. Interesting card, a major arcana we'll look at in a second. Pluto entering the 6th is an interesting one, because the 6th house has to do with everything that we exert a lot of effort to achieve. It's also a house that requires that we exert effort, or that we persevere in order to overcome obstacles or hardships. So you can think of the 6th as a place of like slavery and hard work and like chronic illness and things that kind of keep coming at us that we have to endure and sort of burn and suffer through, that are unfortunate, On the other hand, you can think of anything worthwhile in life that requires sacrifice and effort over a long period of time. Some degree of sacrifice and service is also implied in the sixth house. Pluto entering this house could suggest that there are new endeavors or activities that are compelling, that are capturing your imagination, that say you are going to start working and pouring energy into the sacrificial fires of this great work. And it's going to take 2 decades. You're going to be, there's something you're working on now that it's partly your own spiritual work, but it's also the things that you are building or making. You think of the sixth almost like an apprenticeship for people who are passionate about something, or you think about Pluto in the sixth being about the wisdom of overcoming difficulties through perseverance and digging deep. And sixth house is like Buddha training insofar as we have to learn how to deal with suffering and setbacks and learn how to be happy even despite their existence. But it's also about the things that require a lot of effort and sacrifice and passion. So when I see that, that's interesting because the card that I pulled for Virgos, thinking that these are the themes that are going to start becoming resonant for you, the card that I pulled is the Hierophant. Now, this could easily be a picture of the Buddha bestowing the boon, or Jesus, or any other god in the Indian tradition bestowing that boon, that sense of blessing. The Hierophant is, of course, like a European version of the idea that there are avatars or figures that we go to, whether they're in temples and they are deities like Murtis, like images of a god or goddess, or it's a literal person like a pope or the Dalai Lama. But we go and we essentially ask for blessings, or we ask for forgiveness, or we ask for something that we recognize as belonging, the authority resides in some force or power that is greater than ourselves. And what I find really interesting is Pluto in the sixth is totally appropriate for the Hierophant insofar as when you start pouring energy into the sacrificial fire, metaphorically speaking, you are asking that your effort, that your sacrifice, that your work be considered by the gods, and that it's sort of like a shaman that is doing sacrifices and asking for rain. The sixth house has to do with Pluto in there, has to do with this rich force and energy that you're going to start pouring into something. And I would see the Hierophant as asking that your efforts be recognized and acknowledged. Not rewarded might not be the right word, but like that there be a response. Yes, if you practice, in time you will become masterful at your instrument. This has to do with the idea that my sacrifices be worthy, or also it has to do with the appeal to a higher authority for grace, mercy, help, healing, forgiveness, and that not from some place of I'm not worthy, or not out of fear, but developing a right relationship with the higher authorities that help us overcome things and give us help, or that acknowledge our efforts and reward our sacrifices. And that's what the gods do. That's why we connect with the gods. And that's really the role that I see the Hierophant playing. Take out the kind of Christian connotation of the Pope and all of that. It's really, it's better understood that way on an archetypal level. So let's go on to, after Virgos, we go to Libra. So with Libra, we take Pluto, we put it into the fifth house, which was called the joy of Venus and the house of good fortune. It was connected with creative satisfaction as well as sensual and romantic enjoyment, associated with procreation and pregnancy and children. Pluto in the fifth house is truly a place that will start unlocking our sense of creative satisfaction or sensual enjoyment or pleasure, or Pluto in that house is really about, for example, some people who have been pent up romantically, sexually, or creatively will find that there's this volcano of creative energy, sexual energy that's ready to come forth. It's very creative. It does things creatively. It could create a baby, but it could also be about creating currents of better, almost like finding yourself better aligned with the needs of your body to experience pleasure, your mind to experience pleasure. There's also a sense of, wealth or reward or luxury and abundance, and maybe explorations of the dark side of pleasure that Pluto can bring up in the fifth house, because one of the things Pluto does is it sort of makes us look at shadows, and the shadow of the fifth is often pleasure. You'll find gambling addictions, alcoholism, sex addictions, all sorts of things in the fifth house sometimes when there's challenging planets there that indicate that we need to revise or rework our relationship with pleasure. Anyway, the card that came up was the Six of Wands, which is an interesting card because it really suggests victory and celebration and success, but also, exploration maybe of pride and power. And that's the dark side of maybe Pluto in a house that was called the house of good fortune. This guy looks pretty fortunate, right? He looks like he's got something rolling in his way. He also looks like he might be like arrogant or maybe too proud or something like that. So a little bit of that, I think, in the mix, like explorations of power, success, wealth, happiness, abundance, and the dark side of those things, as well as the releasing of those creative energies that can do some really amazing things and truly make you happier if you're a Libra. So watch for that release of creative energy. All right, let's go forward to Scorpio, which brings Pluto into the fourth house. Now, you Scorpios know that you're no like stranger to the darker and more subterranean energies. Modern astrology associates Pluto with Scorpio. I do not personally. I think there's some really nice associations, but I don't give outer planet sign rulerships as a traditional astrologer. I use them all the time, but in this case, though, I do think it's worth mentioning that this Plutonian energy in some ways is a little bit like, I'd say there's one sign that can deal with it a little bit better than other signs. It's Scorpio. Anyway, let's go into, So great card again. I'll show you another major arcana. Pluto entering the fourth house is entering the place of foundations. It's entering the place of ancient hidden mysteries and roots and ancestry and living environment and family and parents. When Pluto enters this house, you consider generational shifts. You consider changes in the constellations of your family karma, births, deaths, weddings, funerals. Over the course of 20 years, for a lot of people, that shouldn't be too surprising, right? It's a long time. But as it enters, too, you'll start noticing that the plates beneath the surface that hold up the psychic, emotional, and historical foundations of your life are shifting. That can mean moving. It can mean reconstituting what family means or looks like. It can mean that you're buying or selling property. It can mean that there are significant changes in relationships with family members or alterations in the course of family members' lives that are tremendously significant and may start impacting you in subtle ways, because it's amazing what will happen when our family karma shifts, how subtly our own karma will shift, or vice versa. The card that I drew for Pluto entering your fourth house as an Aquarius is the High Priestess, which is a fascinating card that speaks to the development of intuition, as well as the that kind of felt mystical sense of things. And you may, one of the things that, remember, the fourth house was associated with in ancient astrology were the mystery schools. In modern astrology, we associate mystery schools and occult studies with the eighth house. That's not actually the traditional meaning of the eighth house. The fourth house was the house connected with the ancient mysteries and like the Dionysian ecstasies and things like that. So the High Priestess in this card to me speaks to that other possibility that in addition to there being mystical changes, emotional changes within the environment of home, family, ancestral history, land, living environment, that will require you to use more of your intuition to work your way through. This is also a card that quite literally speaks to the idea that you may be getting involved in ancient and enigmatic or occult-like studies, that you will become interested in the mysteries of the universe, so to speak. So I really like that one for Scorpios. It's a really nice pull. Let's go ahead. We're going to move on to Sagittarius. The Sagittarius, Pluto goes into the third house. We sometimes jokingly call it the junk drawer house, but it's not a nice it's not a nice description. The reason we say that is because the third house is called the joy of the moon, and it has to do with the kinds of it has to do with the kinds of things that exist in our everyday environment. I've said this before, but it's a bit like the fish tank that your fish live in. That's their environment. And there's lots of different features in that environment that are constant, that they see and swim around every day. In the third house, we sometimes think of the third house as culture, the kinds of culture or cultures that are part of the makeup of your emotional, psychological environment, ancestral karma, neighbors, siblings, people who are close to you that constitute the root relations and root environmental conditions of your life. That's why the third house was called the joy of the moon. When Pluto enters, it suggests a change of culture and a change of environment. One thing that I drew two cards for this one because the first one confused me a little bit. Here's the first one. It's the 10 of Wands, which suggests perseverance and pushing through to a difficult conclusion. This is about finishing things. This is about things in the environment that you've been enduring or bearing and are ready to set down. The card that I drew in juxtaposition asking, more insight, more information is the Star card, which really suggests that there's a new beginning and fantastic new interesting ideas that can start to reshape the landscape of your everyday life, from what your home environment looks like to the people you hang around with to family relations. It's like the village that you live in psychologically, psychically is ready to change because a new idea is coming forth, a new paradigm. Very Pluto and Aquarius to see those two cards where you're sort of suffering through something that's hard and difficult. It's ready to be laid down. You need to finish it and then establishing a new vision. And this comes in through the mental, emotional environment or landscape of your life, what occupies your mind, but also what defines the kind of fish tank you live in every day. All right, so let's go ahead and we're going to move forward again to Capricorn. So with Capricorn, we bring Pluto into the second house, which is the place of our assets, resources, possessions, things that we have or people around us that serve as major supports in our life. In Indian astrology, the second house is actually connected in some ways to those family members who are most supportive, the education you receive, anything that you're in possession of that kind of grants you some special powers, so to speak, that prop up your existence, that support you. Oh, this is interesting. Okay. So when Pluto enters that house, there can be major changes in terms of money, resources, jobs, your values, possessions, who or what you rely on as a form of support or dependence, but also what you are in possession of that is truly your own, my independent resources. It's a house that often speaks to the need for greater self-sufficiency because I've cultivated things that I can rely on, skills, ability, money, bank account, whatever you want to call it. The first card that I drew for Capricorns with Pluto entering your second, transforming that house of resources, is the Two of Swords, which might mean that you're at the precipice of a new stage and you have to there's different choices. It's not easy to know which way to go. You might have to tap into your intuition and may have to listen inwardly as opposed to trying to sort everything out purely from a rational point of view. And also knowing that you may not have all the information you need yet, and you need to feel your way through until there is more information available. I drew a second card, and the second card I drew is the Fool. And the Fool also points to this being a point of departure from the past. And you're ready to start on a new journey, a new endeavor, probably around money, finances, the resources you have, the skills you have, what you're developing or cultivating. And part of what the Two of Swords might indicate as a sort of juxtaposing card is that, you're ready to take a step into the unknown, and there's a risk involved, and you can't know exactly what's going to come. You can't know exactly which choice is the best. But like the Fool, you have to step out, not totally ignorant and wild, but not so conservative that you get paralysis by analysis. So some risk taking involved for Capricorns when it comes to the exploration of new resources and the transformation of things like money and possessions and so forth. All right, let's bring Aquarius into the first house. In Aquarius in the first, for Aquarians, this is the house of your identity. This is the place where we look to understand psychology, personality, health, vitality, appearance. And what I like here is that this is an opportunity for some pretty serious existential questioning. Who am I? Where am I going? What am I building in terms of myself and my identity, my appearance, my health, or my body? As well as the idea that Pluto is releasing a kind of creative force from your being that needs to be used creatively. The card is the Seven of Pentacles, which shows a man sort of looking over his work, pausing to look over his work. And this is often about like the job is not yet done. You've done some really good work. You're looking over it. You're reflecting on what you've accomplished, and you're deciding on what to do with what you've accomplished or where to go in the future. And so I like this Pluto in Aquarius pairing because for Aquarians, this is like kind of review. It's a time of self-review and self-reflection and looking at how you want to use what you have and who you are to continue building forward in the future. And it's a real moment of reflection and existential transformation for Aquarians in the first house. Who am I? Where am I going? What have I accomplished? What do I have yet to accomplish? How do I go in the direction that I need to go from here? So, how do I take a new direction based on where I am now and where I've been? All right, finally, we have Pisceans with Pluto in the 12th. Maybe one of the more challenging placements for Pluto. And Aquarians, of course, just had Pluto in the 12th for a long time. You guys know what that's like. But one of the things that the 12th house is associated with is a blind spot that we have. The blind spot that we have is not evil. It's not bad. It's just not the thing that we see about ourselves most naturally or readily, or it's that part of ourselves that we struggle to consciously integrate. It's a house that's associated with the unconscious, with that which we don't see, which could undermine us if we don't work to develop some awareness of. But even if we do, the unconscious is colluding to help us grow all the time. And so we really can't look at it as demons or devils, even though sometimes the material in the unconscious can be quite dark. Pluto starting to work into that house is going to help you start seeing parts of yourself that are reaching for conscious exploration and participation. It's like voices and parts of you that want to come to the table and offer something. And you're going to start noticing these parts of yourself through those forces or energies or people entering your life that are prompting you to do or be someone new or different. You're going to have to look at those things that are self-destructive or undermining, and maybe not just from yourself, from within yourself, but also from other people or the environment. And as you get in touch with those things, there's going to be an invitation to develop parts of yourself that they can't be developed until you start seeing the way in which you undermine yourself, or certain people or places or environments are not so good for you. There's also a way in which the 12th house Pluto will start to put you in touch with powerful creative energies in the unconscious that will gradually, over the course of many years, seek more conscious expression and integration. It's kind of like the 12th house was associated, for example, with the labor that comes before birth. And so there's something that, we labor with in the 12th house that has a creative destiny that seeks to be consciously expressed. Anyway, so that's a very hard thing to discuss or describe because it's happening in a place that's not easily seen. And so, watch for dreams, start to watch subtle patterns, start to watch what things or people are entering your life and provoking you to look at things differently. That's the 12th house. The card I drew is the Knight of Swords, which is perfect for Pluto in Aquarius in the 12th. It's an air suit. And the Knight of Swords can represent a person or an energy that's like charged up, that's going to stir the pot mentally, especially, and intellectually. So you also think about what ideas are like stirring the pot for you and forcing you to consider your either things about yourself or life that maybe you haven't considered before, or that figure could be the sign of, ideas or people or figures or voices within yourself that are becoming more dynamic and loud, but it's like, it's an unknown. I'm just getting to know, this is unconscious material. So it's like very powerful, but kind of elusive parts of yourself that will start seeking expression. For Pisceans, where you tend to hang out in the emotional body, being very sensitive and caring and compassionate and empathetic and romantic and imaginative. These energies are more about mind and intellect, communication, the nervous system, and those parts of yourself, there can be a way in which we pit intellectual and emotional against one another. And there's also an opportunity over the coming decades to be fusing intellect and emotion at a deeper level. So anyway, these are my thoughts for all 12 signs. Hope you find this useful as a kind of review on the entrance of Pluto into Aquarius. I hope you are having a great day today. I hope that you enjoyed this, and we will see you again tomorrow for one last episode this week. All right, take it easy, everyone. Bye.